what up? It's Eli.
It's Jason.
It's no way.
And we got the legend here. The guy that lets us use this room. And look who walks in right now.
Walks in on start time.
Yeah, walks in
Let's
late.
go.
It's all on video.
All right, introduce yourself, bro. You got like 5 seconds.
It's Jack. I'm late, and I apologize.
But today we have, multimedia productions himself. We have
man.
theater. We got the man. We
The
got
myth.
Mr. Yost,
The
Hi.
legend.
and he's here with us today on this episode. And we were just gonna ask him a couple questions and see how Mr. Yost feels, and how it was transitioning from one school to the home of the Shamrocks, and all that he's done for the school, especially branching out into the media, and especially letting us use this room for incubator and the equipment.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. First of all, I want to say you guys are doing a really good job with maintaining the senior season podcast, which I know started last year with a group of seniors, and then you guys took it over, and I hope that someone takes it from you and continues to do it next year, because I think it's going to be a pretty big thing. I know it's a pretty big thing, and it's very popular. I've had guys in my class talk about it, and I know the administration is super excited about the podcast. And you've gotten some really good interviews with some really high-profile people, like Mr. Santucci and me.
Mr. Yost, of course. Thank you for fitting us in your schedule.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, first we're going to start with, your acting career before you come to St. Pat's. You did some acting, right?
When I first moved to Chicago about 14 years ago, I thought that I was going to be a professional theater artisan and do, act and direct in the city. And my very first paid gig in Chicago was as an actor. And then from there, I really transitioned into directing. So I was an artistic director for a theater company called Interrobang Theater Project that's no longer active. And I did that for about 11 years, and I directed about 1 to 2 shows each season. And at the same time I was doing that, I was also teaching. So I was teaching, and I was running that theater company, which is almost like having 2 full-time jobs. It was a lot of work. But that's why I moved to the city, because I wanted to do more professional theater. I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a very small city in North Carolina. It's actually a really, really beautiful place to live. And I loved living there, but there just wasn't a lot going on in the city. So I wanted to be in a bigger city. And New York was kind of like a little bit too expensive and sort of out of reach. So I thought Chicago would be a better choice. And I'm glad I did, because I really love the city.
That's good. We want to name some shows you've been on?
Well, the shows that I did here, I did a show called The Father, which is a Strindberg play that I did when I first moved to Chicago, and then I've just directed. Mostly, primarily, I've done a lot of directing. So I directed, obviously, at the school that I used to teach in, and I've directed around the city. I mean, they're shows that you may or may not have heard of, but I've directed everything from Shakespeare to new plays. I've done plays that were like fresh off of Broadway, mostly dramas or like like contemporary comedies that are fairly new. And when I decided to be a director, I just like that more. Directing's kind of like teaching. You're kind of running the room, and you're telling people kind of your vision, and you're guiding them through the rehearsals, and it's very much like teaching. So I think I'm a better director because I'm a teacher, and a better teacher because I'm a director.
I had a question. So, has acting always been a big part of your life, in drama, or how did it start?
When I was in college, I was an English major, and I thought that I was going to go into writing. I really wanted to be a writer, but I didn't think I was that good at writing. I thought there were some people that were better at it. And I took a theater class, and the teacher that I had, the professor that I had, was really, really, really smart and very creative, and she just made it really interesting. And I decided that I was going to double major in English and drama. And that's when I started reading more plays. I did a lot of acting in college, and I did a lot of acting right out of college. And then I started to become interested in, the other side of like directing and producing, and sometimes it just takes one class or one experience to change your perspective, and you realize, oh, I really like this. This is something that I want to do, and I knew that I wasn't going to go into the sciences or anything math related. That wasn't my strong suit, so I knew it was going to be something more literature based, more humanities based, and so I thought, theater seems like something that I enjoy doing. I liked reading plays. I liked being part of that process. I liked going to see them. And so I just kind of started doing that. I think if I wasn't a teacher or a theater practitioner, I actually feel like I would love to be like a talk show host, like a radio DJ. Mm-hmm. I feel like I don't know, there's something about, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Can you give us your best radio voice?
This is it. This is my radio voice.
Oh.
But I grew up listening to Howard Stern when I was young, like way too young to probably be listening to him, and I thought he was so outrageous, and he said very honest things, and he was funny, and I connected with him, and I'm like, oh, there's other people out there in the world that are like, not everybody's so restricted and regimented. Like there are people out there who are very honest, and they're liked because of that, and I think being yourself is important. So I thought about maybe going into that career, but I've been teaching since I was 22, so I've been teaching for a long time, and I feel like it's something that I really enjoy doing, and I don't know that I would really be happy unless I was working with students.
Okay.
I get a question for you, Mr. Yost. So obviously you came from working at Loyola. Can you tell us the difference between coming from the North Shore, rich of the rich, back to coming down here?
I was at Loyola for 11 years. That was a very good school to work at because it was the first school that hired me when I moved to Chicago, and I didn't know much about any of the schools here. I didn't even know what the North Shore was. And then when I started working there, people said, "Oh, you work on the North Shore," and I didn't realize that it had kind of a reputation. But the students were very nice. I really loved working at that school because of the students. The students made it very, very a very good place to work. As you've pointed out, there are a lot of very affluent families that live up there, but there were also kids that were coming in from the city, and even some kids that came in from the South Side. And so, the diversity could, of course, been a lot better, but, I think that's any school's goal is to make the school more diverse, or at least celebrate that diversity. And for the time that I was there, I felt like I did a lot of really great things. We had a really strong theater department, and I loved working with my colleagues. The school had gone through a series of administrative changes, and that was kind of challenging sometimes because you had to get used to the different leadership styles. But I did enjoy working there, and I actually, I got to know a lot of the students really well. Some of them I still stay in touch with. A lot of them are off now with careers. Some of them are married. Some of them have kids now. And there's things about it that I miss, but I think it was time to move on. And I think I really made the right choice by coming to Pat's. I feel like Pat's has a really strong sense of community and a really strong sense of, it does feel sort of like a family. When I'm not here, weirdly, I miss it. And then when I'm here, I don't want to be here. No, I'm just kidding. No, it does have that sense. And Loyola had that, but it was very manufactured. It felt very much like, there were a lot more cliques. It was a bigger school, too, and 2,000 kids that went there. So it was just a different environment. When you're at a larger school, it's harder to build a community that is school-wide. I mean, you had, cliques of students that would interact together, and, teachers that would sort of hang out together, and you get that at any school. But Pat's has a really strong sense of community, and it is, it's a brotherhood, but it's also like a family. And I don't think I've ever experienced that at any school that I've taught in before. So it was a new experience, and I like it. I think it's really good for educational purposes, and I think it's really good for mental health. I'm sure kids have their own experiences here, but it's being smaller and being all boys and having that sense of community is, it makes a difference.
And, like you spoke on like the community and, like this brotherhood aspect. And, you've done a lot of our sports broadcasting, not just for, soccer, football, and now basketball. Like, I think you've seen like the stud section and the fact that so many people come together to
Yeah.
support like their friends play, and like I feel like it's getting that also on video, like with the production, the media crew, like for multimedia productions we have to commentate a game, like I think that putting all that in role, like how do you feel like doing all that and like just seeing the games and coming from like Loyola, which is a pretty big school, and
Yeah.
their sports are also insane. Like I feel like we take that as like as like a community as well.
Yeah, I think what is impressive to me is how many of the boys show up for games, how involved they are in just supporting their teammates. We had a pep rally last week where Coach Bailey talked about how the boys would come to the parking lot and wait, for the team to return. And I think that as we move into the future and things become more technology-based, it's easy to go online and stream the game, but it's different when you're there and you're sitting in the stands and you're feeling that energy. And I had an opportunity to both work and watch the Notre Dame game last year, basketball game, and it gets pretty. I mean, they have to send emails to families and say, let's keep the aggression at a minimum. But
Yeah.
I think that's passion, and I think that rivalry is, it's a rivalry that has historically been significant and will continue to be. But I like that everybody, shows up and is present and engaged and active. I think that's awesome and really important. I was impressed, even when I came to my very first game, at how many guys came, even that weren't involved in sports at all. They were just there to support their friends. It's pretty amazing. And I get to know the guys, one, for who they are, but also connected to what sport they play, right? So I know, Neve's a basketball player, so when I see Neve, I always, think about the fact that he's a really good basketball player. But beyond that, I also have gotten to know him as a human being, and other students as well, throughout my 2.5 years here. So I get to know them on a deeper level, and then I also get to see their prowess on the court or on the field.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mr. Yost, I got a question.
Okay.
How was it like growing up in North Carolina?
Well, I actually grew up in Pennsylvania.
Oh.
So I went to college in North Carolina.
UNC?
I went to Queens University. No, a very small college in Charlotte. It was Queens College when I went there. Now it's Queens University of Charlotte. It's a very small school. I was not a good student in high school. I was solid C. Didn't really
Yes, sir.
care about school. Yeah.
C's to get you degrees.
I see to get your degrees. I'm actually still surprised that I was able to graduate because I did not do well in a lot of subjects. I just didn't care about school. I never did my homework. I never really paid attention. I was screwing around in class a lot. The strictest teachers that I had, the ones that really were strict, particularly with me, were the classes that I seemed to do the best in. And I'm surprised that I went into teaching because I was so adverse to being in school and being in the classroom. And I thought once I get out of high school, I didn't even think I was going to go to college. But my parents sort of encouraged me, and I ended up going to Queens, very small school in North Carolina. And my first year of school was rough because I also still was in that mindset of like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to read this chapter. I don't want to do this homework. And eventually something clicked, and I started to look at my education differently. And I started to really pour myself into the things that I loved. And I tried my hardest at the things that I didn't. And I found that college was really where I figured out who I was, the kind of person I wanted to be, how I felt about education. And so sometimes I have students who are very much like me, and I see that, and I'm like, I know what it's like for you to be in a classroom. You don't really want to be here. Education is not that important to you, or it's boring or whatever. And I was that kid. So I don't I see those students sometimes, and I'm reminded of what I was like when I was in high school. And I think a lot of my teachers will tell you that I was a pain in the ass. I was not I wouldn't say discipline problem, but I was always screwing around, making class clown kind of stuff. And then when I started teaching, I wanted to learn more, and I started reading things that I was interested in, and I started pursuing things that I wanted to learn about. And being in North Carolina put me in a different environment. And if you've ever been to the South, things are a little slower there. People are a little bit more congenial and kind, and it's just a different environment, and I think it got me to sort of be more introspective about who I was, and I kind of became a different person, as I think everybody does when they go to college. It's very transformative.
Now, when you moved back, or when you moved over to Chicago, did you move like by yourself or with your family?
I moved with somebody, and that person and I are no longer together. She's lives in Michigan now, but we both decided that we wanted to live in a bigger city. We're both from Charlotte, and we kind of moved together. I had been wanting to move for years and years. I kept putting it off and didn't want to take that leap. I was very pragmatic about, I want to make sure I have a job and I'm financially secure and all the things that you think about before you make those big leaps. And then I did it, and I moved in July, and by August I had been hired at Loyola, and by the following September I was already doing theater stuff. So it happened fairly quickly, but I was glad that I did it, because I kept putting it off, thinking it's, you're always waiting for that right moment, but sometimes there just isn't a right moment, so you just got to do it. That's what I did.
How was that culture shift from being in like North Carolina coming to Chicago? Because I know it's very different, like you said.
Yeah.
So I was just curious about that.
The Midwest is a very particular place to live. It's cold, as you guys know. Yeah. That was a big shock, and also just culturally, there were a lot of Midwestern things that it's not that dissimilar from the South. People are very cordial here. They're very nice. They're not. It's not like New York or Philadelphia. They're nice. They're approachable. There were a couple of like words that I had to get used to. Like a lot of people here use the word washroom for bathroom, which was new to me. Pop instead of soda, which was new to me. I'd never had a beef sandwich or deep dish pizza, so those were new. I actually had my first beef sandwich ever at St. Pat's. Never had one before. I didn't even know what they were.
What was your opinion on it?
I thought it was good, and then I had one at Al's Sir Beef or whatever it is, and that one was just as good. I don't know. I can't tell the difference.
What was your first deep dish pizza?
It was a Giordano, the one that
Yeah, Giordano's.
and then since then I've been to like Pequod's, which I think is the best. But Giordano's was my first.
Can you make a pizza?
Not a deep dish pizza, but I can make a pizza,
Like
especially if it's frozen. Put that in the oven.
No, weren't we your first class students?
Yeah.
At St. Pat's.
Yes,
So
sir. We
my
were
first-
also Mr. Santucci's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think Santucci was here a year before me. I think he
Yeah.
came in,
maybe
and then I
very
came in
close.
the following year. So
It was you and Harrington.
yes, me and Mr. Harrington started the same year. Mr. Harrington and I talked on the phone because he was starting over the summer, and I was interviewing, I think, the year before. So we all met and talked, and he told me what his vision for the theater program was and kind of some of the changes that were happening here. And I really like Mr. Harrington, and I really like Mr. Santucci. I think they're incredible assets to the school, and the things they've done to turn it around, whether you agree with them or not. What I've heard about how things used to be from former students and teachers and where things are now, it's different. And people don't like change, and they don't really like when things are different, but I think they've made some really, just the classes that have been created and that are being offered here in the 3 years that I've been here is astounding. Like the things that you can take. I know Mr. Harrington's teaching a class for people that want to be teachers, which is a cool class. Somebody's teaching a class on, the incubator class
There's a
is
leadership
awesome.
class, I think.
There's
from
a leadership
Singrati
class. Yeah.
That Singrati teaches.
So there's just all these classes that I'm like, if I were in high school, that would be interesting to me. Like TV production, film, are classes that I teach. But when Mr. Harrington and I were talking about what those classes could be, and I thought there's going to be a lot of resistance because it's a lot of equipment, it's expensive, there may not be any interest in it, and at no point was I told no. It was always let's see if it works, let's make it happen, and all this equipment in here, all the equipment for film and TV, and it's giving students an opportunity to get some hands-on experience, using the equipment that they would use out in the real world, and learning things that may be helpful to them. Podcasting is so popular now. No matter what career you go into, you can always have a podcast. So many people do it, and because of like Joe Rogan and others kind of making podcasting legitimate, everybody's doing it now. And you can do it, and it's a great way to kind of market yourself. But I'm so I get so excited about all of the classes that every year I see new things and new opportunities for students to take things that are of interest to them. Because again, when you're a student and you're like, I love these things, but they don't have those things, and now there's opportunities for you to take a class for teachers or a class for. I think somebody's doing a. Isn't one of the trainers teaching a class too?
Yeah, I'm in that class.
What is it?
It's called like.
You don't know what it's called. He's
I
taking
forgot what it's called, but we're just learning on about pronation, supination,
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
different
yeah.
kind of like movements in
like
the body.
physical therapy almost.
Yeah,
which-
it's introduction to becoming like a sports trainer, or
like
something.
sports medicine. Yeah.
Sports medicine.
And because a lot of the students here, I think, some students don't, college is not their thing. One, it's very expensive. And two, they know I'm not going to, 4 more years of school isn't going to change my life. So they want to go out and they want to get a job and they want to work and they want to have a little foundation for that. And you can do that here. There's classes that you can take that are going to kind of give you that foundation, which you don't have at every school. And I think that's awesome. It's another great reason to work here and go here, I think.
That's
Was
very
that
true.
your question? I don't remember if that was your question.
Oh yeah, no, we're talking about how were your first class?
Oh yeah, you were a sophomore.
Yeah, no, we had a three person class. It was me, Gavin.
Yeah.
Oh, four. Me, Gavin, Leo, and then Nick Simchek.
It was Digi City.
That's right.
It was
Digital citizenship.
We made a website.
That's right.
I had the class that was like packed. It was me, Kev Bed.
I forgot about
Wasn't
that.
Cosmac in that class?
Yeah, and like Kuzar and Matt. There were so many people in there. I remember
My
that.
very first class, my very first day teaching, and my very first class was that class, digital citizenship. So, in my very, very first class, I had Luke, DeMarco, Cosmac, and DeMarco was like, DeMarco. So I was like, whoa. But as I moved through the semester, I realized that everybody was really awesome, very easy to interact with. There were never any real discipline problems. And I've never really had any discipline problems since I've been here, other than like normal things. I actually had a lot more discipline problems at previous schools. Just disrespect for teachers or for other students, or, just a general apathy of like, I don't want to be here, and that teachers see that and they're like, all right, we get you don't want to be here, but you can pretend for 85 minutes that you do, and then complain about the class elsewhere. But I've been in situations and done things that I didn't want to do either, and sometimes you can't help but wear that on your face. So but yeah, it was a really good first year, and I loved the classes that I had, and I could tell after my first month that I was going to like this environment and this culture. That was when classes were shorter too. They were only 55 minutes.
Yeah,
so we had
all
like 8 a
classes
day,
every
or 9
day,
a day,
yeah.
which was a lot. Do you like the new schedule?
It's all right.
Yeah.
I like it.
I got
think
used to it.
better.
Some classes feel real long.
Because it changed between your sophomore and junior year, right?
Yeah.
So some people were worried that it was going to not work, but I think
It's all right.
I think it's
I was
it's
gonna
better.
say, wasn't that one of the big changes your dad like brought in with him?
I'm pretty sure this old school was all 8 periods, but I think it was a mix of ideas. I don't know if it was just his idea.
Oh,
But one thing I was gonna tell you about it. I remember the first time I shadowed with my friend in my first class ever, shadow at St. Pat's, was with you when we were playing shellac in the auditorium.
Oh, you were there? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
It was me and my friend Noah. It was the first time I've ever shadowed,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was shadowing Pat LeVar, and DeMarco was going insane. I remember he laid out some kid and he went flying because I think he had to run to the middle, right, or something.
Yeah.
And he laid him out, and then you guys were. I didn't know how to play, so you guys were just letting me just stand there. And I got to the final round. I think it was against DeMarco, and then you just gave me the win. And then
This was
DeMarco
you were a
crashed
shadow
out
at that
yeah,
point? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
DeMarco is a have you had him on this podcast?
No,
No.
Sure, he's got some interesting stories.
But we should.
No, and where do you learn all those games at? We play,
Definitely, but-
we play a lot of
the 100.
yeah. Where do you learn those?
So
at?
a lot of them are things that I've learned from when I went to. I have my master's degree in basically theater education, and it's a lot of ensemble building games. How do you get the? A lot of people take theater classes and they're very nervous about it. They're not, they're worried about looking foolish or whether or not they're going to click with people. They don't like being watched. So it's, when you're in a theater class, it's just it's not like science and math where you're focused on your own thing. You're working with other people. So learn a lot of icebreaker games and games that kind of get people involved. And there's kind of an arsenal of different games. I like the ones that are a little bit more physical. I just think they're more interesting. So I've just collected them throughout, my years of teaching. I learned some from other teachers. Sometimes kids have things that they've learned from things they've done, and if I'm like, that's a really, really cool game. Warm-up games are nice for theater classes because I look at theater and the arts in general as a nice break from your academic day in terms of using a different part of your brain, and you shouldn't be stressed out or overwhelmed, in a class like that. It should be hard and rigorous, but you shouldn't be going home worrying about performing or worrying about, whatever project you're working on. And I think it makes it a little easier and a little bit more approachable when a student feels safe in that environment and not like overly concerned about how they're going to be perceived or whatever. So I try to do that. And those games are sort of helpful because you do sort of become a little bit more, I guess, engaged in not only the warm-ups, but like what we're doing in the class. Digital citizenship was different, though, because that wasn't really a theater class. They don't have, obviously, you guys know they don't have that anymore. But
I was looking forward to taking it again.
Digital citizenship, too? Honors?
AP.
AP?
No, and then, during your acting or whatever, your career, what's like the most famous person that you've like worked with or you have a relationship with?
The only time I've ever met a famous person was I was dating someone whose roommate when she lived in Brooklyn was a singer in New York and worked at a restaurant. And Patrick Stewart, you know who Patrick Stewart is? Famous British bald guy from Star Trek.
Yeah.
He was doing some play there and would go to that restaurant, and he was flirting with her, and then they eventually started dating, and then they got married. Her name is Sunny Ozell, and we all went to dinner, and so I had dinner with Patrick Stewart, and it was weird to be with somebody that famous because everywhere we went, people knew who he was, and I thought that's so cool. But then I was like, if that happens every time he goes somewhere, that's going to be annoying. Because it was not annoying, but it was like people were coming up to him and definitely trying to take a picture, and it was a lot. That's the only time I've really met anybody that I would consider to be famous. Most of the people in Chicago, and there's a lot of working actors in Chicago, but a lot of them also have day jobs or they do other things. Yeah. The people that are working at like the big theaters, they go all around the country and are constantly doing things. But most people that live in the city and work in the city have other jobs that they do. So it's more of a passion project and less of like a career.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Yost.
Ran out of questions.
For
You're welcome.
Coming up on air.
Yeah, thank you.
I just think that there's a lot to think, especially here around the school. Just the podcasting equipment in general, and just being able to use this part of the building for a business class, learning how to maintain and put ourselves out there. And
yeah, I don't even think we had access to this part of the building.
Yeah, this used to be offices for.
This was an off-limits restricted zone fine.
Yeah.
That was $100 if you got caught in it.
Was that when you were a freshman?
We had fines when we were freshmen.
I remember that. Cell phone fines?
$100 if we got caught.
Imagine that if that was still a thing.
Yeah.
Again, this is all Mr. Harrington and Mr. Santucci's vision was to, they obviously cleared that whole office out and put this in here and this little podcasting studio in here. And you guys are doing a regular, consistent podcast show, which is what you need to do. The more content you have, the more people are going to tune in because they're going to want new stuff. So congratulations to you. Who's taking over next year? Do you know?
Right now we're thinking Matt Hearn, maybe. Oh no,
Tommy Stanton.
Yeah,
Tommy Stanton, Matthew Hearn, maybe.
Well, both the Hearn brothers, right?
Both of them in it?
I think they're both in it, right?
Oh yeah, then it'll probably be both of them.
Is one of the requirements you have to be in the incubator class?
It's incubator 2.
Okay.
So they would have to be taking incubator 1 this year.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Which
Awesome.
incubator is fun by itself.
Yeah.
Incubator 2 is.
That's a year-long class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Yost.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you. We'll see ya. Peace.